Hello, and welcome to the Preschool Essential Evaluation Team Report, Part 1. The Preschool Essential ETR module is presented in two separate parts. The module provides a detailed overview of the Evaluation Team Report, ETR process for preschool-age children. The ETR process is required by the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, and the Ohio Operating Standards for the Education of Children with Disabilities in order to establish the presence of a qualifying disability or disabilities of a child suspected to have a need for special education services and supports from ages 3 through 21 years old. Please be aware that when using the dynamic version of the forms, you will need to complete all preschool areas. This is part 1 of the module focusing on referral, planning, and individual evaluator assessment reports. The ETR process begins with a referral for a child who is struggling with functional, developmental, and/or academic readiness areas. A parent, Part C provider, or school staff member may initiate a request for an evaluation, either in writing or verbally to the district. The district would provide the parent a copy of the Guide to Parent Rights in Special Education, then complete the Referral for Evaluation, PRO4 form. It must be signed by both the person initiating and the person receiving the referral. Please note that some parents may not be native English speakers. As described by the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, parents and guardians of students who are learning English have the right to receive all communications regarding special education, referral, and assessment in a language that is understandable. Written translations and the use of interpreters should be provided to assure that culturally and linguistically diverse parents are informed and able to participate meaningfully in the education of their children and youth. Remember that consent means that the parent has been fully informed of all information relevant to the activity for which consent is sought in the parent's native language or other modes of communication. The reason for an evaluation should be directly linked to the child's performance in the general education curriculum, or data pertaining to the child's growth and development, including age-appropriate routines and activities, and be clearly communicated to the planning team. This is documented on the PRO4 and in Part 2 of the ETR. If a re-evaluation, then stating that the evaluation must be done every 3 years does not justify why the district proposes a re-evaluation or why the child continues to qualify as a child with a disability. If the child was previously provided services by Part C and/or Part B of IDEA, then please note that a referral for evaluation may not be submitted by school personnel without including data from those settings to address the child's area of deficit or difficulty. Federal and state laws require that each school district shall provide interventions to resolve concerns for any preschool or school-age child who is performing below grade level standards. This would also include behaviors that interfere with the child's access, participation, or progress in the general education curriculum. The district must document the actual date the referral was received. If a district is invited by a Part C provider to attend a transition planning conference, then the date of that transition planning conference is the date of the referral, if the transition planning conference occurs within 150 days prior to the child's 3rd birthday. If the district believes there is no suspected disability and declines to conduct an evaluation, the district must send the parent a prior written notice, PRO1, stating the action and the reason the district refuses to initiate an evaluation. The referral date starts the 30-day timeline to inform the parent what the district intends to do and to obtain parental consent for an initial evaluation. If the district believes there is a suspected disability and feels an evaluation is necessary, they must provide a prior written notice, PRO1, to the parents that indicates proposal to initiate an initial evaluation. The district must invite the parent to participate in the evaluation planning meeting by sending the parent the invitation PRO2 form to the parent. The form also indicates other persons that have been invited to the planning meeting, such as early intervention Part C providers, community, or other preschool providers. Parents need as much notice as possible to be able to attend meetings. Parents who have jobs where scheduling is not flexible or have childcare requirements need significant notice to schedule the time off to attend this meeting, as well as all other meetings within the process. Evaluation planning is a required component of the evaluation process. You must indicate the appropriate planning form, school age or preschool, on the front page of the ETR. The evaluation planning form does not require a face-to-face meeting. It can be held over the phone, through email, or other correspondence. The parents must be included in the planning process, or the district needs to document that the parent declined to participate or was not available after reasonable attempts and efforts were made to involve them. The parent must be fully informed of all information relevant to the evaluation for which consent is sought in the parent's native language or other mode of communication. The results of the planning meeting must be documented on the planning form, which is a component of the evaluation team report, PRO6, and the district must obtain parental consent for an initial evaluation, parent consent for evaluation, PRO5. Let's take a closer look at what is meant by must include the parent in the ETR planning process. Consent for the evaluation must be informed consent, showing that the parent was involved in and understands the planning process. This must be documented by a signature and date or notation of opportunity to participate on the evaluation planning form. It is important every effort is made to involve the parent in the evaluation process and to gather any relevant information about the child. Many districts treat this information as optional, yet the operating standards are clear that this information is to be part of any initial evaluation or re-evaluation unless the parent does not respond or refuses to participate in the process. If the parent refuses to participate, the district must document multiple attempts to engage the parent in the evaluation process. Attempts to engage the parent may include phone calls, emails, parent invitations sent home with the child, registered letters, meeting the parent in the hallway, parent-teacher conferences, home visits, etc. Reasonable attempts to conduct meetings on additional dates, not simply attempts to include the parent in one single meeting date, must be demonstrated by the district. This can be done on the OP9 attempts to obtain parent participation form or a district-created form. The preschool evaluation planning form has been simplified to show what assessments areas are required for all and what are only required for some situations. At the top of the preschool ETR planning form, there is a space to enter the suspected disability. There may be multiple suspected disabilities selected. You always need to have all relevant assessment elements completed that are necessary for substantiating eligibility for all of the suspected categories. Developmental delay should rarely be the only category selected. By selecting developmental delay as the only category of suspected disability, the district representative is attesting that all of the above disability categories have been considered and determined not applicable. Additional procedures for identifying children with specific learning disabilities apply to both preschool and school-age children. The requirements for the specific learning disability category evaluation are in addition to the preschool comprehensive evaluation requirements. Please note, If suspected learning disability is one of the suspected disabilities and later decided it is not the eligibility determination, Section 3 still must be completed and attached to the ETR. Links to the operating standards that define the requirement are hyperlinked throughout the planning form. When you click on the link, it takes you to Law Writer. After the team has decided on one or more suspected disabilities, they will consider what data is available and what assessments need to be administered and complete the planning form table. There are two main sections of this table. The first section indicates developmental areas, and the second section indicates the assessment methods and data sources. For each developmental area, the team decides if there is existing data available or if additional data is needed. The team will document the title of the person responsible for gathering the data and documentation in the Assessment Methods Data Sources section. In cases where both existing data and additional data needed are marked on the planning form, the evaluators must clearly identify which type of data is being referenced within the individual evaluator's summary of assessment results. Each developmental area must be assessed using at least one of the 5 assessment methods data sources. And each assessment method data source must be used at least once. For preschool, 2 structured observations are required in more than one setting and in multiple activities. Remember that the evaluation must be sufficiently comprehensive to identify all of the child's special education and related service needs, whether or not commonly linked to the disability category in which the child has been classified. Note in the last column the addition of community or preschool program provider. Including data from a community or preschool program provider is not a new rule, but is new to the form. Data from community or preschool program providers is required if the child has attended a program in the past 12 months. In the table, document the title of the person responsible for gathering the data and documentation, completing the assessment and writing the report of that assessment. Please note, with respect to an individual who is limited English proficient, assessments must be given in the child's native language or other mode of communication and administered in accordance with any instructions provided by the producer of the assessments. Assessments and tests used in the evaluation process must be technically sound, not discriminate based on race or culture, be provided and administered in the child's native language or other mode of communication, be validated for the specific purpose for which they are being used, and be administered by knowledgeable persons in accordance with the instructions provided by the test publisher. For preschool-age children, as appropriate, the evaluation shall include the following specialized assessments. Physical examination completed by a licensed doctor of medicine or doctor of osteopathy in cases where the disability is primarily the result of a congenital or acquired physical disability. Vision examination conducted by an eye care specialist in cases where the disability is primarily the result of a visual impairment. And an audiological examination completed by a certified or licensed audiologist in cases where the disability is primarily the result of a hearing impairment. The requirements for specific learning disability category evaluation are in addition to the preschool comprehensive evaluation requirements. The full evaluation team is not required to be present for the ETR planning meeting with the parent. A qualified district representative and the parent are the required members. However, the district representative who participates must be able to communicate the assessment recommendations to the parent effectively to ensure the parent is able to give informed consent and is knowledgeable about the availability of resources of the school district. The signatures and dates at the bottom of the planning form are the district's documentation that the parent and the appropriate team members were part of the planning process. If the parent does not sign the planning form, the district will need to have additional documentation showing reasonable efforts were made to obtain the parent's participation in the evaluation planning process. In order to document this, a district could use the optional form OP09. If the parent was unavailable or declined to be involved, documentation must be kept by the district as well as explained on a PRO1 sent to the parent. Parent consent must be obtained before an evaluation is conducted using the Consent for Evaluation form PRO5. Parent consent means informed consent. The parent must be involved in the evaluation planning process, have their rights explained to them, and understand what granting permission to conduct an evaluation by the district means. This is especially important for the initial evaluation. At the end of the evaluation planning meeting, the district should present the parent with a consent for evaluation PRO5. This form documents informed written consent given by the parent or guardian, allowing the district to proceed with the proposed evaluation, assessments, and data collection. A planning meeting or other meeting to inform the parent does not need to be face-to-face and can be held over the phone or virtually, but the consent needs to be written and cannot be verbal consent. The PRO5 should be date stamped by the district. To document the date the district received the signed parental consent. The 60-day timeline to complete an initial evaluation starts on the date the district receives parent consent. If the district does not date stamp the PRO5, the date the parent signed is the start date for the 60-day timeline. It is important every effort is made to involve the parent in the evaluation process and to gather any relevant information about the child. Many districts treat this information as optional, yet the operating standards are clear that this information is to be part of any initial evaluation or re-evaluation unless the parent does not respond or refuses to participate in the process. If the parent refuses to participate, the district must document multiple attempts to engage the parent in the evaluation process. Attempts to engage the parent may include phone calls, emails, parent invitations sent home with the child, registered letters, meeting the parent in the hallway, parent-teacher conferences, home visits, etc. Reasonable attempts to conduct meetings on additional dates, not simply attempts to include the parent in one single meeting date, must be demonstrated by the district. This can be documented on the OP9 Attempts to Obtain Parent Participation form or a district-created form. The informed parental consent for a re-evaluation need not be obtained if the school district can document that it made reasonable efforts to obtain such consent and the child's parent has failed to respond. Reasonable efforts include detailed records of telephone calls made or attempted and the results of those calls, copies of correspondence sent to the parents and any responses received, and detailed records of visits made to the parent's home or place of employment and the results of those visits. If a member of the evaluation team suspects a new disability or determines a different assessment method or tool is necessary during the evaluation process, you must obtain parental informed consent in writing, PRO1, to address the collection of new information and reconvene the evaluation planning team to update the planning form to address these additional needs. It is acceptable to update the planning form by having the evaluation planning team, at minimum the parent and district representative, initial and date wherever changes were made. Please note, this does not extend your original 60-day timeline. The prior written notice, PRO1, must be sent to the parent after the planning meeting, explaining all the assessments and evaluations proposed in the meeting. In summary, The team must use a variety of assessment tools and strategies to gather relevant functional, developmental, and academic readiness information about the child, including information provided by the parent. These are the forms required throughout the evaluation process. Initial request for evaluation begins 30-day timeline. A guide to parent rights in special education procedural safeguards notice provided to parents. PRO4, Referral for Evaluation, begins the evaluation process and is completed by the district team. If the district does not suspect a disability within 30 days of request for evaluation, PRO1, prior written notice to parents, must be sent to the parents if the district decides not to initiate the evaluation process. The notice needs to state the action and the reason the district refuses to initiate an evaluation. If district does suspect a disability within 30 days of request for evaluation, PRO1, prior written notice to parents, must be sent to the parents if the district decides to initiate the evaluation process. PRO2, parent invitation, must be sent to the parent to invite them to the evaluation planning meeting. Evaluation planning form, a component of PRO6, documents the results of the evaluation team planning meeting. PRO5, consent for evaluation, must be signed by the parent after the evaluation planning meeting. This form may be presented to the parents at the planning meeting to obtain their signature. PRO1, prior written notice to parents, must be sent to the parent after the planning meeting, explaining all assessments and evaluations proposed. The individual evaluator's assessment form must be filled out by each evaluator identified by position or title on the planning form as being responsible for one or more elements of the evaluation. The form includes the evaluator's name, title or position, area of assessment or data collected as listed on the planning form, and the evaluation methods and strategies. Each individual evaluator assessment must match the assessment and evaluation methods strategy as indicated on the planning form. When combined, all individual evaluators' assessments included in the final ETR must address all assessment methods, data sources, and developmental areas documented on the planning form. The individual evaluator's summary of assessment results in Part 1 of the ETR must be clearly stated in language all team members, including the parent, will understand. The individual evaluator's assessment must include the name and type of each assessment or information collected and method of data collection, the date the assessment was conducted, and the interpretation of the assessment results. When summarizing an outside assessment, the same information must be provided as well as who conducted the assessment. Be sure to clearly and concisely cover all areas of each individual assessment tool that was administered, including areas of strength, typical performance, and challenge. This section should be a true summary. The summary should convey the child's abilities in each of the areas assessed. The educational needs section must consist of a complete description of educational needs based upon the data provided in the summary of assessment results. The areas of challenge identified in the summary of assessment results that are considered to have educational impact are listed in this section. The educational need should describe the specific skill deficit areas that prevent the child from accessing, participating, and/or making progress in the general curriculum, including age-appropriate routines and activities. In the next section, the evaluator must clearly describe implications for instruction and progress monitoring based upon the results of the assessment and description of educational needs. Describe implications for instruction based on the individual needs and strengths of the child. This section should convey what the adult evidence-based strategies might be to address the child's needs as identified in the previous section. It is important to describe these strategies as individualized to the child's needs, not just a standard list of accommodations and/or modifications. Recommendations for prioritizing interventions and supports should be considered. Additionally, The evaluator must include recommendations for progress monitoring techniques that will be efficient, effective in the measurement of student progress. For more information, please visit our website at education.ohio.gov. For further support, contact your state support team, SST. To find your SST, please visit education.ohio.gov and search the keyword State Support Teams.